She had been waiting for 2 years. 2 years of lonely nights. 2 years of letters that stopped coming. 2 years of staring at an empty road, wondering if the man she promised to marry would ever return. Then a stranger rode up to her porch with a grin that felt like trouble and a voice that made her blush. Her cousin had hired him. A companion. The kind of man respectable women whispered about. The kind of man she should have sent away the moment he arrived. But he did not leave. He chopped her wood. He fixed her broken fences. He filled her silent cabin with laughter she had forgotten how to feel. And when her fiancé finally returned after 2 years of silence, he did not ask if she was safe. He did not ask if she was lonely. He asked her to sell her father's land and move to the city where he could control her life. That was the moment Aveline Somerville stopped waiting for the wrong man and started fighting for the right one. Stay until the very end, because this story will show you what happens when a woman finally chooses herself. This story teaches us that waiting for someone who does not choose you is not loyalty, it is self-abandonment. It reminds us that the person who stays, who sees you, who builds with you, is worth more than any promise made by someone who walked away. Do not settle for someone who makes you feel small. Choose the one who makes you feel seen. If this story made your heart race, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever stopped waiting for the wrong person and found something better? Would love to hear your story. Hit that like button if you believe real love chooses you back. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that reminds you what you deserve. Share this with someone who is still waiting for someone who stopped showing up. Your share might be the wake-up call they need. The first sign that Aveline Somerville's life was about to change came with the sound of hoofbeats on the long, empty road leading to her cabin. Bitter Creek, Wyoming territory sat 2 miles behind her like a forgotten corner of the world. Out here, the wind carried every sound, every whisper, every hope and fear. But this sound was different, steady, unhurried, drawing closer with each passing second. It made her heart twist in her chest. She was not ready. She had changed dresses twice that morning. She had tied and retied her hair until her fingers ached. She had rehearsed what she would say. Then she forgot all her words the moment her hands began to shake. The prairie sun pressed hot across the yard. The land stretched in all directions with nothing but dust and stubborn grass. The cabin behind her creaked in the heat. The chickens pecked lazily at the dry earth. Everything felt too quiet, too exposed. And then he appeared over the rise. A tall man on a dusty bay horse, broad-shouldered, sunburned, easy in the saddle like someone who had lived more on horseback than on solid ground. When he reached the porch, he swung down in one smooth motion. His boots hit the dirt with a heavy thud that made her pulse jump. He tipped his hat back. She saw his eyes, blue, bright, and too bold for a stranger. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said with a slow grin. "Name is Crispin Bywater. I hear you sent for a man." Aveline felt her throat close. She gripped the porch railing to steady herself. "I did not exactly send for anyone," she managed. "My cousin Honora arranged this. No need to explain." He stepped closer. He leaned lightly against the porch post as if he owned the breeze itself. "Your cousin said you needed help around the place. Someone to keep you safe. Someone to keep you company. Someone reliable." His gaze swept the yard. Then it returned to her face with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "And I am all that, ma'am. As long as the terms are clear." "Terms," she echoed. He hooked his thumbs in his belt. He was still smiling in that way that made her feel seen and unsettled at the same time. "A fellow like me does not move without conditions. Folks hire me for all sorts of work. Chopping wood, fixing fences, talking through lonely evenings." His eyes twinkled with something she could not name. "Sometimes riding from the back of the saddle if a lady prefers." Her breath caught. "From the what?" His grin widened. "Ma'am, I meant horseback. You got a wild mind for a shy girl." Her cheeks flamed so hot she thought the sun might be jealous. She wanted to run inside and slam the door. She wanted to disappear into the floorboards. But he laughed, not mockingly, just warm enough to disarm her. "Do not fret. he said. "I do not do anything improper unless a lady asks proper first. I am here for honest work and decent company, whichever you want more." Aveline stared at him, her hands twisted in her apron. She had expected someone older, rougher, quieter. Not a man who walked in with sunshine clinging to him, not someone who talked like trouble and comfort all at once. "I hired you for chores," she said quietly. "Just chores. Fair enough." He touched his hat brim in a polite half-bow. "Housework, yard work, hauling, fixing, talking, whatever you need. I will keep to manners while I am paid to." Despite herself, her lips nearly twitched at that. She stepped aside and gestured toward the door. "You may come in." "That is the sweetest yes I have heard all week," he said, and he followed her inside. The cabin felt small with him in it. Too small. He filled the space like he filled the doorway. He brought dust, warmth, the scent of leather and open sky. Aveline tried to busy herself with supper, but her hands trembled as she set bread on the table. She nearly dropped the butter dish twice. Crispin noticed. He noticed everything. "Ma'am," he said gently, "you live out here alone." "For 2 years," she murmured without looking up. He gave a low whistle. "That is a long time for anyone. Longer for a woman on the frontier." "I have a fiancé." Even saying it felt strange, like repeating a story she barely believed anymore. "He has been traveling. His business keeps him away." Crispin raised an eyebrow. "For 2 years?" "He writes letters." "When was the last one?" Aveline's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "December." "December was 6 months ago," he said softly. "A man who means to marry you does not wait 6 months to send a word." The truth stung. It stung because she had whispered the same thing to herself in the dark. She had stared at the ceiling on countless lonely nights asking the same question. Why had Marmaduke stopped writing? Why had he stopped caring? "He will return," she insisted. Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Maybe." Crispin leaned forward. He lowered his voice. "But whether he does or not, you are not meant to live quiet and scared out here all alone." Her breath shivered. She looked down at the worn wooden table, at the scratches and stains that marked 2 years of solitary meals. "I did not hire you to speak about my engagement." "No, ma'am," he said. He rose to clear his plate without being asked. "You did not hire me at all. Your cousin did. But since I am here, I reckon I will be useful." He rolled up his sleeves. His arms were strong, scarred, steady. He began washing dishes at her sink as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Aveline stared. Marmaduke would never have touched a dish. Marmaduke would have sat in the parlor waiting to be served. Marmaduke would have found manual labor beneath him. "Why do you do this kind of work?" she asked before she could stop herself. Crispin paused only a second. Then he spoke with an honesty that surprised her. "I got a family back in Ohio. Mama and 9 younger siblings. My father died when I was 17. Everything fell apart after that." He shrugged lightly. But his eyes held something deeper than casual acceptance. "If I had stayed, they would have starved. So I came west and I send money home, enough to keep them alive, enough to buy a future someday." His voice softened. "I am not proud, but I am not ashamed either. A man does what he must for the people he loves." Aveline swallowed past the ache in her throat. This was not a scoundrel, not a drifter, not what people whispered about men in his profession. This was a man who made hard choices for the people he loved. When he finished the dishes, he dried his hands and faced her fully. "I will come back tomorrow," he said. "You have got firewood needs splitting." She nodded because she could not speak. He smiled, warm and teasing again. "And ma'am, you make a man forget this job is not meant for decent talk." When he stepped out onto the porch, the silence rushed back in behind him, but it did not feel like punishment anymore. For the first time in 2 years, it felt like the start of something. Something she did not yet dare name. Crispin Bywater returned the next day at noon, just as he promised. The sun hung high over the Wyoming prairie. It turned the dry grass almost white. Heat shimmered off the ground like water that was not there. Aveline had tried not to wait by the window, but she found herself drifting toward it again and again. She rearranged the curtains. She dusted the sill. She pretended she was not looking for a tall figure on the horizon. When she finally saw him coming up the road, her breath caught before she could steady it. He wore his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, his hat tipped low against the sun. He walked with the easy confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was. "Afternoon, ma'am," he greeted with a nod and a grin that felt like warm weather after a long winter. "Ready to put me to work?" She handed him the axe before she could lose her nerve. "You can start with the firewood." He swung it easily. The blade split logs with clean, confident strikes. Every thud echoed through the yard like a heartbeat, like proof that she was no longer alone on this land. Aveline tried to busy herself with chores, but her eyes kept drifting back to him as he worked. Steady, sure, patient. He hummed while he chopped. He told small stories between swings. He made the work seem almost light. "You ever think of leaving this place?" he asked during a water break. She shook her head. "This is my father's land. It is all I have left of him." "He died?" "3 years ago. Fever took him in the winter." Crispin was quiet for a moment. Then he said softly, "That is a hard loss to carry alone. I was not supposed to be alone. Marmaduke was supposed to come back after he settled his business affairs. He said it would only take 6 months. And you believed him?" "I had no reason not to." Crispin lowered the water dipper. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her look away. "You have got more than land," he said gently. "You have got time. You have got choices." Aveline tried to laugh. The sound came out hollow. "I am waiting for a man. A man who does not write does not give much to wait for. It is not so simple." "It never is," he agreed softly. But he did not push. He only wiped sweat from his brow and went back to swinging the axe. Day by day he returned, until 2 weeks passed like a quiet miracle. He fixed the barn door that had been hanging crooked for 18 months. He mended the fence where the posts had rotted through. He hauled water from the well without being asked. He cleared brush from behind the cabin. And inside the cabin he filled the silence with life. He told her stories. Ridiculous stories, wild stories. Stories that made her choke on her own laughter because she had not laughed like that in years. "Got chased out of a cornfield once," he said one afternoon. He was hammering a loose board on the porch. "A husband came home early. Angry fellow did not appreciate my singing." "You sing?" Aveline asked. "Poorly. Very poorly. Lady paid extra for it, though. I should have charged more for the pain I caused myself." Aveline covered her mouth to hide her smile, but he caught her anyway. His hammer paused mid-swing. His eyes lit up. "There it is," he said softly. "Your real smile. I was wondering when you would let me see it." Her cheeks warmed. She busied herself sweeping the porch. But he had already seen the way her eyes brightened when she forgot she was supposed to be lonely. As summer deepened, the days grew longer. The work grew harder, the sun grew hotter. Crispin shed his shirt during work. Aveline tried not to look, she truly tried. But his back moved like carved wood in the sunlight. Every muscle shifted beneath skin that was marked by sun and scars. He worked with the kind of rhythm that made everything else fade away. When he caught her staring, he only grinned. "You look at me like that and folks might think you are taking a liking to the view." She fled inside, mortified. He laughed behind her, but not unkindly, never unkindly. Despite all his teasing, he never stepped beyond what she allowed, not once. He was gentle when she startled, respectful when she pulled back, playful without ever trapping her. Until one quiet evening when he reached over her shoulder to grab a plate from the high shelf. His chest brushed the back of her dress, only lightly, only for a moment. But she froze at the warmth of him, at the solid presence of another person so close, after so long alone. He stopped instantly. Careful, ma'am, he murmured near her ear. When a woman stands this close to a man like me, folks might think she is wanting more than supper. Aveline's breath tangled in her chest. You are insufferable. I am honest, he said quietly. There was no teasing in his voice now. And if I ever touch you more than this, I will warn you first. So you can step away if you want. She turned to him before she realized her mistake. He was closer than she thought. His eyes were bright and troubled all at once. I am engaged, she whispered. I know, he said. He stepped back. Put distance between them. That is why I keep my hands on honest work. That night, she did not sleep well. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She thought about Marmaduke's letters, how formal they had always been, how distant. She thought about Crispin's laugh, how it filled the cabin, how it made even the loneliest corners feel warm. She thought about what it meant to wait for someone who never came. The next morning, a letter arrived. A rider from town brought it to her door. He tipped his hat and rode away before she could ask questions. The handwriting was unmistakable, precise, slanted, formal. Marmaduke Fenwick, her fiancé, her promise, her past. Crispin climbed down from the roof the moment he saw her face. He had been fixing shingles. His hands were still dusty. His brow was still damp. Good news, he asked gently. He is coming back, she whispered. In 2 months. Something flickered in Crispin's eyes. Something that looked almost like pain, but he simply nodded. Then you will have your answer soon enough. She opened the letter in her kitchen. She read it once, twice, 3 times. It did not feel like a love letter. It felt like a ledger, a business contract, a reminder of her duty. When Crispin stepped inside, she held the paper with trembling fingers. He says he will finalize our engagement. Finalize, Crispin echoed. That is a cold word for a man talking to the woman he wants. It is how he speaks. Does he ask if you are safe? If you are lonely? If you are well? She looked at the letter again. Her eyes scanned every line, every word. There was none of that. He is busy, she whispered. Crispin crouched beside her chair. His voice was soft, but steady. Ma'am, a man who loves you does not write like this. A man who loves you asks about your days. He wants to know if you are happy. He counts the hours until he can see you again. Aveline felt tears rise before she could swallow them back. He reached up slowly, giving her time to move away. When she did not, he brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You deserve someone who chooses you first, he murmured. Every single time. Her breath shuddered. The room felt too full, her heart felt too loud. She stood abruptly. She needed distance. She needed air. I did not hire you to speak about my engagement. Then I will not, he said. He rose from the floor. He took a step back. But I will keep coming long as you need me. And he did. Summer faded into early fall. The nights grew cooler. The prairie turned gold. The wind carried the first whispers of winter. Aveline threw herself into harvest chores. She picked vegetables from the garden. She preserved what she could. She prepared the cabin for the cold months ahead. Crispin stayed by her side, steady as sunrise, reliable as the ground beneath her feet. He never mentioned the letter again. He never spoke of Marmaduke. He simply worked. He simply stayed. He simply filled the silence with his presence, until the day a black carriage rolled into the yard. Aveline heard it before she saw it. The crunch of wheels on gravel, the jingle of harnesses, the snort of well-bred horses. She stepped onto the porch. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The carriage was polished, perfect, completely out of place on this dusty frontier homestead. It belonged in Denver or San Francisco, not in Bitter Creek, Wyoming. Marmaduke Fenwick stepped down from it. He looked every inch the man he was, refined, controlled, distant. His clothes were clean and pressed. His boots shined like glass. His smile was practiced and polite. "Aveline," he greeted. He took her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. "My dear, I told you I would return." The world tilted beneath her feet. The air felt thin. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. She had dreamed of his return. She had rehearsed what she would say. But now that he was here, she felt nothing but confusion. "Marmaduke," she managed, "you look well. As do you." He glanced at the cabin with barely concealed distaste. "Though I see this place has not improved in my absence." Before she could respond, the barn door opened. Crispin stepped out. His arms were full of firewood. His shirt was dusty. His hair was damp with sweat. He stopped when he saw Marmaduke. His expression went carefully blank. Marmaduke stared at him. His polite smile turned into something colder. "You may leave the grounds," Marmaduke said curtly. "We have private matters to discuss." Crispin did not move. He only looked at Aveline. "You want me to go, ma'am?" Her voice barely followed her thoughts. "Perhaps." "Yes, perhaps that would be best." He nodded once. He set the firewood down slowly. But before he walked away, he gave Marmaduke a look that said he had measured him and found him lacking. Inside the cabin, Marmaduke spoke for almost an hour. He talked about Denver, about investments, about the railroad company that was making him wealthy, about the house he had purchased in the city, about the society events he attended. He talked about selling her land. "This property has potential," he said. He paced the small cabin as if he owned it already. "But it needs to be developed properly. I know investors who would pay handsomely for this acreage." "This is my father's land," Aveline said quietly. "Your father is dead." Marmaduke's voice was matter-of-fact. "Cold. And you are a woman alone on the frontier. You cannot possibly manage this property by yourself. I have managed for 2 years. Barely." He waved his hand dismissively. "Look at this place, Aveline. It is falling apart. You deserve better than this. You deserve a real home, in a real city, with a real husband." She stared at him. At this man she had promised to marry. At this man she had waited for through 2 long, lonely years. He had not changed. He had always been like this. Controlled, condescending, so certain that he knew what was best for everyone. She had simply forgotten. She had remembered only what she wanted to remember. She had built him up in her mind until he became someone he never was. "What about what I want?" she asked softly. Marmaduke blinked. The question seemed to surprise him. "What you want?" "My dear, I am offering you everything. A beautiful home, financial security, a respected position in society. What more could you possibly want?" She did not answer. She could not, because the truth was too complicated to put into words. He left an hour later. He promised to return the following week with contracts for the land sale. He promised to finalize their engagement. He promised many things, but not once did he ask if she was happy. Not once did he ask if she was lonely. Not once did he ask about her days, or her dreams, or her fears. After his carriage disappeared down the road, Aveline sat trembling in her kitchen. She heard footsteps on the porch. The door opened slowly. Crispin stood in the doorway. His face was concerned. "You all right?" he asked softly. "I do not know." He stepped inside. He leaned against the doorframe. He did not come closer. He did not push. What did he say? "That he wants to marry me, move me to Denver, sell this land." Crispin's face hardened. Something dark flickered in his eyes. "And is that what you want?" She looked at him. At the man who had made her laugh, who had seen her at her worst, who had stayed when no one asked him to. "I do not want to leave," she whispered. "And you do not have to." Her breath hitched. "But I promised him." He broke his promise first. Crispin stepped closer. His voice was firm but gentle. "He left you alone for 2 years, Aveline. He did not write. He did not visit. He did not care if you were safe or scared or starving." She flinched. The words hit like stones. "And you do not owe him your life," Crispin continued. "You do not owe him your land. You do not owe him anything." Before she could answer, a sharp rattle echoed from the road. Marmaduke had returned, sooner than expected, and this time his face was twisted with fury. He stormed up the steps. His polished boots thundered against the wooden porch. He pointed at Aveline's chest like she had wronged him. "You," he hissed, "you have been keeping company with a man like him." Crispin was there in 2 strides. His body moved between Aveline and Marmaduke like a shield. "Say that again," he warned. His voice was low and dangerous. Marmaduke sneered. "He is a hired companion. Everyone in town knows what that means. And you, Aveline, you have shamed yourself by allowing such a man into your home." Aveline felt the words cut through her, the judgment, the contempt, the cruelty hiding behind propriety. But Crispin did not flinch. He did not punch Marmaduke. He did not shout. He did not touch him at all. He simply stood tall, steady, quiet. "I am a man who stayed," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "That is more than you ever did." Marmaduke's face went red, his hands clenched into fists. "You have no idea who you are speaking to. I know exactly who I am speaking to." Crispin took 1 step closer. "A man who abandoned his fiancée for 2 years. A man who never wrote. A man who came back only to take her land." "That is not true." "Then where were you?" Crispin's voice hardened. "Where were your letters? Where were your visits? Where was your care when she was struggling alone on this frontier?" Marmaduke had no answer. His mouth opened and closed, his face contorted with anger and shame. "Get out," Aveline said quietly. Both men turned to look at her. She was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice, by the clarity in her own mind. "Get out of my home, Marmaduke, and do not come back." For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind whispered through the open door. The silence stretched like a held breath. Then Marmaduke laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You will regret this," he said. "When winter comes and you are alone and starving, you will wish you had accepted my offer." He turned and stormed back to his carriage. The wheels clattered as he drove away in a storm of dust. Aveline watched him go. Her breath was shaking. Her heart was racing. But she did not feel afraid. She felt free. The dust settled slowly after Marmaduke's departure. Aveline stood on the porch watching the empty road. Her hands were trembling. Her heart was pounding. But somewhere beneath the fear and the shock, something else was growing. Relief. She had spent 2 years waiting for that man. 2 years measuring her days by the hope that he would return. 2 years putting her life on hold for a promise that was never going to be kept. And now it was over. Crispin stood beside her, silent, patient, giving her space to feel whatever she needed to feel. "I should be crying," she said finally. "I should be devastated." "Should does not mean much out here," he replied softly. "Only what is." "What is?" she repeated. She turned to look at him. His face was half in shadow. His eyes were steady and kind. "What is that I am relieved. Is that wrong?" "No, ma'am. That is honest." She let out a breath she did not know she was holding. "He never loved me. Not really. I think I always knew it. I just did not want to believe it." Crispin nodded slowly. "Some folks love the idea of a person, not the person themselves. Is that what he did? Love the idea of me? I reckon he loved the idea of owning you. The land, the homestead, the pretty wife waiting patiently at home. But you? The real you?" He shook his head. "A man who loves the real you does not leave for 2 years without a word." Aveline felt tears prick her eyes. But they were not tears of grief. They were tears of recognition, of finally seeing the truth she had hidden from herself for so long. "I wasted so much time," she whispered. "Time is only wasted if you do not learn from it." She laughed softly. When did you become so wise? His grin returned. That familiar teasing warmth. Somewhere between the cornfield and the third angry husband, I reckon. Despite everything, she smiled. They went inside as the sun began to set. Crispin built a fire in the stove. Aveline prepared a simple supper. They moved around each other like they had done it 1,000 times before. But something was different now. The barrier between them had fallen. The excuse of her engagement no longer stood like a wall. Now there was only the truth of who they were and what they felt. "What happens now?" Aveline asked as they sat down to eat. "That depends on what you want." "What do you mean?" Crispin set down his fork. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I mean you are free now, Aveline. Free to do whatever you choose, free to go wherever you want, free to be with whoever you want." His voice softened. "And I need you to know that I will not be the man who takes advantage of that freedom. If you want me to leave, I will leave. If you want me to stay as just a worker, I will do that too. But I will not push you into something you are not ready for." She stared at him, at this man who had walked into her life with jokes and sunshine, who had seen her at her loneliest and never made her feel small, who had stayed when everyone else left. "What if I am ready?" she asked quietly. His breath caught. She saw his fingers tighten around his cup. "Ma'am. Aveline." He blinked. She had never corrected him before. "Aveline," he repeated. His voice was rough. "Are you sure you know what you are saying?" "I am saying that I spent 2 years waiting for the wrong man. I am saying that the right man has been here all along. I am saying that I am tired of waiting." She stood up. She walked around the table until she was standing in front of him, close enough to touch, close enough to see the hope and fear warring in his eyes. "Crispin Bywater," she said softly. "Will you stay? Not for a job, not for payment. Will you stay for good?" For a long moment he did not move. The fire crackled in the stove. The wind whispered outside. The world held its breath. Then Crispin exhaled. It sounded like a man steadying himself after a hard fall. "Aveline," he said quietly, "you know what I am. You know my past. Folks will talk. They will judge. They will make your life harder because of me. Let them talk." She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were trembling, but her voice was steady. "Let them judge. This is my life, my land, my choice." His eyes softened in a way she had never seen before, like sunlight settling over the mountains at dusk. "You want me?" he asked, not teasing this time, not smiling, just asking as if the answer mattered more than anything in the world. "Yes." He swallowed hard. His voice came out rough. "God help us both." And then he laughed, half disbelief, half joy. He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. He caught her in his arms. He lifted her clean off her feet and spun her once before setting her gently back down. "You are proposing to me," he said. His eyes were bright with wonder. "Yes, you are serious." "Yes." He pressed his forehead to hers. His breath was unsteady. His hands were shaking as they held her. "Then I am the luckiest fool on this frontier." She laughed. It bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her, pure and unguarded and free. "Is that a yes?" she asked. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "That is a forever yes. That is a wherever you go, I go yes. That is an every morning and every night yes." He cupped her face in his calloused hands. "I will build you a bigger house. I will give you children if you want them. I will stay by your side until my last breath, and then I will find a way to stay longer." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling, smiling so wide it hurt. "Then stay," she whispered. Stay and never leave. He kissed her then, gentle at first, like he was afraid she might disappear, then deeper, more certain, a promise sealed with lips instead of words. When they finally broke apart, the fire had burned low and the stars had come out. "We should probably do this proper," he said. His voice was husky. "Find a preacher. Say the vows." "Tomorrow," she agreed. "Tomorrow," he echoed. But neither of them moved. They stood in the warm kitchen holding each other, afraid that if they let go, the moment might prove to be a dream. It was not a dream. For the first time in 2 years, Aveline Somerville knew exactly what she wanted, and she was not going to wait another moment to claim it. The decision made itself. They would marry quickly, quietly, without waiting another season, or another letter, or another broken promise. Honora arrived the next morning with her arms crossed and her eyes sharper than a hawk's. She had heard about Marmaduke's visit. News traveled fast in small towns like Bitter Creek. "You sent him away," she said, standing on the porch like a general surveying a battlefield. "That pompous, overdressed peacock came all the way from Denver, and you sent him away." "I did," Aveline confirmed. Honora studied her face for a long moment. Then she broke into a grin. "Good. About time you stopped waiting for the wind to blow a man back to you." "There is more," Aveline said carefully. Honora raised an eyebrow. "I am marrying Crispin." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Honora's expression shifted through surprise, concern, and finally something that looked like satisfaction. "The hired man." "The man who stayed," Aveline corrected. Honora nodded slowly. She looked toward the barn where Crispin was pretending to organize tools while clearly eavesdropping. "He makes you happy." It was not a question, but Aveline answered anyway. "He makes me feel like myself. That is the only reason that matters." Honora squeezed her hand. "When is the wedding?" "Wednesday." "This Wednesday? That is 3 days from now. Is that too soon?" Honora laughed. "For you, nothing is too soon. You have been waiting long enough." The church bell in Bitter Creek rang on a Wednesday afternoon. Half the town came to witness the ceremony. Not out of support, out of curiosity. Whispers curled through the pews like smoke. "That is the girl who waited 2 years for that Fenwick fellow, and now she is marrying the hired companion." Bold choice, foolish choice. Aveline felt every stare, every judgment, every whispered word. Then Crispin reached out and took her hand. His palm was calloused, warm, his grip was steady. "Just look at me," he whispered. "Forget them. Just look at me." So she did. The preacher was a thin, nervous man who kept glancing at the congregation as if expecting someone to object. He rushed through the vows so quickly that Aveline barely had time to respond. "Do you, Aveline Somerville, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "And do you, Crispin Bywater, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." Crispin's voice was clear and strong. "Today, tomorrow, forever. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The preacher closed his book with obvious relief. "You may kiss the bride." Crispin grinned. That familiar mischievous grin that had made her heart flutter from the very first day. "About time," he murmured. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Long, warm, certain. The kind of kiss that made promises without words. The preacher coughed. The congregation gasped. Someone in the back muttered something disapproving. But Aveline did not care. She was kissing her husband. She was starting her new life, and nothing else mattered. They left the church to scattered applause and fierce whispers. The sun was bright, the sky was clear. The future stretched before them like an open road. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly as they rode home in her wagon. Crispin squeezed her hand. "Not for a heartbeat. Do you?" She looked at him. At this man who had changed everything. at this man who had shown her what love was supposed to feel like. Not for anything. The cabin that had once echoed with silence now felt fuller, warmer, alive. Crispin carried her over the threshold. He stumbled on the doorframe, laughed at himself, set her down gently. "Our house now," he murmured. "Our house," she agreed. That night they did not speak much. There was too much to feel, too much to discover, too much to celebrate. But before they slept, Crispin pulled her close and whispered against her hair, "I will spend every day earning this. I promise you that. Every day for the rest of my life. You do not have to earn anything," she whispered back. "You already have everything I am." He held her tighter. Outside, the wind whispered across the prairie. Inside, the fire crackled low. And for the first time in 2 years, Aveline fell asleep without fear. She fell asleep feeling loved. The first days as husband and wife were quiet in the way new things are. Soft, hopeful, unsure. They learned each other's rhythms. The way Crispin hummed while he worked. The way Aveline grew quiet when she was thinking. The way they fit together like pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting to be solved. Crispin stopped traveling for work. He put away the life he had lived before. He turned to the land instead. He mended the old barn roof that had leaked for years. He repaired the wagon wheel that had wobbled for months. He organized the tool shed that had been chaos for as long as Aveline could remember. He worked beside her without complaint, without pride, without the teasing he once used to hide his own careful heart. Well, mostly without teasing. "You are staring again," he said one afternoon. He was splitting wood in the yard, shirtless because the October sun was still warm enough to allow it. Aveline felt her cheeks flush. "I was not staring." "You were definitely staring." He grinned over his shoulder. "Not that I mind. Stare all you want. I am yours now." She threw a dish rag at him. He caught it easily and laughed. That was their way now. Easy affection, comfortable banter. The kind of intimacy that comes from choosing each other every single day. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in November. It blanketed the prairie in white. It turned the world quiet and cold. They faced it together. They stacked firewood high against the cabin wall. They stored vegetables in the cellar. They patched drafts in the cabin walls with rags and mud. Some nights the wind rattled the shutters so hard it sounded like someone trying to get in. In the old days, Aveline would have lain awake trembling, wondering if the next storm would be the one that finally broke her. But now she had Crispin. He would reach for her in the darkness, pull her close, whisper something ridiculous until she laughed despite her fear. "That wind sounds angry," he would say. "Must have heard about my singing." Or he would tell her stories, ridiculous stories about his past adventures, stories that could not possibly be true but made her smile anyway. By spring, the homestead bloomed in ways it never had before. Aveline planted a garden twice the size of the old one. Crispin built a new chicken coop with proper ventilation. They painted the porch railing a cheerful blue that looked like the summer sky. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. Together, they made the land productive in ways it had never been before. But the world outside their homestead was not as kind. Whispers followed them everywhere. In the general store, at the church, on the streets of Bitter Creek. She married a companion. You know what kind of man that is? Bold of her to think she can live that down. Marmaduke Fenwick is telling everyone in Denver. Her reputation is ruined. Aveline pretended not to hear. But the words stung like thorns. They lodged in her heart and festered there in the dark. One afternoon she came home from town with red eyes and trembling hands. Crispin took one look at her and set down his tools. "What happened?" "Nothing." She tried to brush past him. "It does not matter." He caught her arm gently. "Aveline, tell me." She crumbled. The tears she had been holding back spilled down her cheeks. "Mrs. Patterson," she whispered, "at the general store. She would not serve me. She said she does not do business with women who marry scandal." Crispin's jaw tightened. His eyes went hard. That old crow has no right. She has every right. Aveline wiped her eyes. I knew this would happen. I knew people would talk. Let them talk. It is not that simple, Crispin. I have to live here. I have to buy supplies here. I have to look these people in the eye. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight. Then we will show them, he said against her hair. We will build something so good they cannot ignore it. We will live so well they choke on their own jealousy. She laughed despite herself. A small, wet sound. You make it sound easy. Nothing worth having is easy. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. But I promise you this. Every person who whispers behind your back will someday wish they had half of what we have. She believed him. Against all reason. Against all evidence. She believed him. The months passed. Their life grew fuller. Crispin learned to read properly with Aveline as his teacher. Every evening they sat by the fire while he practiced words from the newspaper. He stumbled over half of them. She corrected him patiently, proudly. Aveline learned to laugh freely again. The guarded, careful joy of her old life gave way to something more open, something more honest. They fought sometimes. Small arguments about chores or plans or the right way to fix the fence gate. But they always made up before sleep, always reached for each other in the darkness. And slowly the whispers in town began to fade. People saw them at church every Sunday, saw Crispin helping elderly neighbors with heavy loads, saw Aveline organizing the town harvest festival with cheerful efficiency. They saw a marriage that worked, a partnership built on respect and genuine affection. Maybe I was wrong about them, Mrs. Patterson admitted one day, loudly enough for Aveline to hear. That Bywater fellow works harder than any man I know. Aveline smiled and said nothing. But that night she told Crispin what Mrs. Patterson said. He laughed until tears ran down his cheeks. That old crow, he wheezed. I knew we would wear her down. Aveline kissed him. We wore them all down. That is what happens when you refuse to break. He pulled her close. The world gets tired of pushing. Outside the window, the Wyoming stars stretched across the sky like scattered diamonds. Inside, the fire burned warm and steady. They had built something good, something real, something that would last, and the best was yet to come. One soft morning in their second spring together, Aveline woke feeling strange. Not sick exactly, just different. The world seemed brighter somehow, more vivid. The smell of coffee from the kitchen was almost overwhelming. She lay still for a moment, trying to understand what was happening. Then the realization hit her like summer lightning. She counted back the days, counted again to be sure. Her hand drifted to her stomach. Could it be? She did not tell Crispin right away. She wanted to be certain. She visited the doctor in town and sat trembling in his office while he confirmed what she already knew. Congratulations, Mrs. Bywater, the old doctor said with a kind smile. You are going to be a mother. Aveline walked home in a daze. The prairie had never looked so beautiful. The sky had never seemed so vast. Every color was more intense. Every sound was more musical. She was going to be a mother. Crispin was in the barn when she returned. He was repairing a harness. His hands were busy, but his eyes found her immediately. Something wrong, he asked. His face shifted to concern. You were gone a while. Nothing is wrong. Then why are you crying? She had not realized she was crying. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. I went to see the doctor. Crispin dropped the harness. He crossed the barn in 3 long strides and took her hands in his. Are you sick? What did he say? Do we need medicine? Crispin, tell me. His voice was urgent. Whatever it is, we will face it together. I am pregnant. The word hung in the air between them. Crispin's face went completely blank for one long moment. Then he let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Pregnant, he repeated. Yes. You are certain? The doctor confirmed it. Crispin pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. A baby, he whispered against her hair. Our baby. Are you happy?" He pulled back and looked at her. His eyes were shining with tears he did not try to hide. Happy does not begin to describe it. He cupped her face in his hands. "I never thought I would have this, Aveline. A home, a wife who loves me, and now a child." His voice broke. "I never thought I deserved any of it." She kissed him then, soft and tender and full of promise. "You deserve all of it," she whispered. "You deserve everything. The pregnancy changed everything and nothing." Aveline continued her work around the homestead, though Crispin insisted on taking over the heavier tasks. He built a cradle in the evenings, carving it with more care than he had ever given anything. He would sit by the fire, woodworking tools in hand, tongue poking out as he concentrated. "What do you think?" he asked one night, holding up the half-finished cradle. "It will have stars carved on the headboard, for good dreams." Aveline's heart swelled. "It is beautiful. The baby will love it." "How do you know?" he grinned. "Because the baby will have my excellent taste." She threw a sock at him. The months passed quickly. Summer gave way to fall. The leaves turned gold and red. Aveline's belly grew round. The women of Bitter Creek began to soften toward her. They offered advice, handed down baby clothes, shared stories of their own pregnancies. Mrs. Patterson even knitted a blanket. She presented it to Aveline with gruff embarrassment. "For the little one," she said. "Every baby needs a warm blanket." Aveline thanked her sincerely. The past was finally fading. The whispers were finally dying. The community was finally accepting what had been true all along. Crispin and Aveline loved each other. Their marriage was real. Their family was going to be just fine. The baby came in December. A little girl with Crispin's blue eyes and Aveline's dark hair. They named her Hope. "Because that is what you gave me," Crispin whispered, holding his daughter for the first time. "When I showed up on that dusty porch, I had nothing but my hands and my stories. You gave me hope." Aveline watched him cradle their child, this man who had been dismissed as scandal, this man who had surprised everyone with his steadfastness and his love. "She gave us hope," Aveline agreed. "Our little girl." That winter was the happiest of their lives. They spent long evenings by the fire, passing hope between them. They sang lullabies and told stories. They made plans for the future. "We should expand the house," Crispin said one night. "Add a room for Hope. Maybe another for whoever comes next." "Whoever comes next," Aveline repeated. She smiled. "You are already planning for more children. I am planning for everything." He kissed her forehead. "I want to give you the world, Aveline. Every good thing I can manage, you already have." She touched his cheek. "Everything I need is right here in this room." Hope gurgled in her cradle. The fire crackled, snow whispered against the windows, and Aveline knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The years passed like water in a river, sometimes rushing, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Hope grew from a baby to a toddler to a little girl with too many questions and not enough patience for answers. She had her father's charm and her mother's stubbornness. A dangerous combination, Crispin often joked. Then came Samuel, a boy with serious eyes and a gentle heart. He followed Crispin everywhere, wanting to learn every skill his father possessed. Then came Lily, the youngest, full of fire and mischief. She kept them all on their toes. 3 children, 3 miracles, 3 reasons to build a bigger life. Crispin kept his promise. He expanded the cabin until it was no longer a cabin at all. It was a house. A proper house with 4 bedrooms and a parlor and a kitchen big enough for all of them to gather. He built it with his own hands, board by board, nail by nail, until the homestead looked nothing like the lonely place where Aveline had once waited for the wrong man. The community changed too. The old prejudices faded as newer families moved to Bitter Creek. These families only knew Crispin as a hard-working man with a loving wife. They only knew Aveline as a respected member of the community. Patterson passed away in their 8th year of marriage. At her funeral, her daughter approached Aveline with tears in her eyes. "She talked about you near the end," the daughter said. "She said she was wrong about you. She said you had the happiest marriage in all of Wyoming." Aveline's throat tightened. "She was kind to me, in her own way. She admired you." The daughter squeezed her hand. "We all do." Crispin became something of a local legend. He discovered he had a gift for storytelling. Not just the wild tales he had always told Aveline, but real stories. Stories that made people laugh. Stories that made people cry. Stories that made the long frontier nights feel shorter. Folks started paying him to perform at gatherings. He would stand in front of a crowd and spin tales of his past adventures, turning scandal into humor and mistakes into wisdom. "That shy woman married me," he would say with a grin, nodding toward Aveline in the crowd. "So the joke is on her now." People would laugh. Aveline would blush. The hat would fill with coins. He became known across 3 counties as the storyteller who had won the heart of the woman who waited. But for all his public success, his greatest joy was his family. Every evening he came home with the same eager expression. "What happened today?" he would ask. "Tell me everything." And the children would tumble over themselves to share their stories. Hope was learning to bake. Samuel had found a bird with a broken wing. Lily had tried to ride the pig and failed spectacularly. Crispin listened to every word like it was the most important thing in the world, because to him it was. Summer nights were Aveline's favorite. The children would chase fireflies in the yard, while Crispin strummed a borrowed guitar and sang off-key. The songs were terrible, but the laughter was real. "You sound like a dying coyote," Samuel once said. Crispin clutched his chest in mock horror. "My own son, wounded by my own blood." "It is true, Papa," Hope added. "Even the coyotes sound better." Lily just giggled and chased another firefly. Aveline watched from the porch, her heart so full it ached. This was everything she had wanted, everything she had never dared to hope for. Winter mornings were Crispin's favorite. He would wake before dawn to start the fire. Then he would return to bed and pull Aveline close until the children woke. They would have breakfast together, bread that Aveline baked, eggs from their chickens, milk from their cows. Then Crispin would read the newspaper aloud, stumbling over half the words until Aveline corrected him. The children would laugh. Crispin would pretend to be offended. It was their routine, their rhythm, their life. They were never wealthy. Money remained tight, even in good years. But they were whole. They had land that produced. They had a house that sheltered. They had children who thrived. They had each other, and that was more than enough. One spring afternoon, a letter arrived from Denver. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The seal was formal. Aveline opened it with steady hands. Marmaduke Fenwick had died. The letter was from his solicitor. He had never married. He had left no heirs. His business had failed years ago. He had spent his final years alone in a boarding house, bitter and forgotten. Aveline read the letter twice. Then she placed it in the stove and watched it burn. Crispin found her there. He wrapped his arms around her waist. "Bad news?" "Old news," she said. "Someone I used to know died. Anyone I should mourn?" "No." She leaned back against him. "No one who matters anymore." He kissed her temple. Then, "Let us go watch the children. They were trying to build a kite this morning. I suspect it has already crashed." Aveline smiled. "Let us go." They walked out together, into the sunshine, into their life. And they did not look back. Many years later, when their children were grown and gone, Crispin and Aveline sat on the porch at dusk. The land stretched wide and peaceful before them, golden in the fading light. Quiet in that way the prairie gets when the day releases its hold. Their home stood solid behind them, the house that Crispin built, the home that Aveline filled with warmth and laughter. Their hard years lived between them, weathered but not forgotten. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me?" Aveline asked. Crispin's face crinkled into a grin. The same grin that had made her heart flutter more than 30 years ago. Something about riding from the back of the saddle, as I recall. She swatted him with her apron. You nearly scared me to death. You let me stay anyway. I was curious. You still are. They held hands as the sky turned from peach to purple. His fingers were more weathered now, spotted with age, but still strong, still warm. Inside, they could hear Hope's children arguing over chores. Their grandchildren visited often now. The house was never quiet for long. The chickens clucked in the yard. A cow lowed in the distance. Life hummed around them like a warm heartbeat. "Crispin?" Aveline asked quietly. "Yes, my love. Do you think our story will last?" He turned to look at her. His blue eyes were still bright, still full of that mischief that had never faded. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "A love story that starts wrong and ends right always lasts. That is the kind people remember, the kind that gives others hope." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "We started wrong, did we not?" He chuckled. "I showed up as a hired companion. You were engaged to another man. Folks whispered for years." He shook his head. "We started about as wrong as possible. But we ended right. We are still ending right, every single day." The wind whispered across the fields. It carried with it the memory of a lonely girl and a wandering man who found one another on a dusty Wyoming porch. It carried the memory of a choice. Aveline had chosen to stop waiting, to claim her own life, to love a man the world said she should not love. And Crispin had chosen to stay, not for payment, not for obligation, but because his heart had found its home. Those choices had built everything that came after. The house, the children, the grandchildren, the decades of ordinary days that added up to an extraordinary life. "I would do it all again," Aveline said softly. "Every moment, every hardship, every joy. So would I." Crispin squeezed her hand. "1,000 times over. I would find you in every lifetime." She smiled. "That sounds like one of your stories." "My best story," he said. "The one I will never stop telling." The stars began to appear, one by one, like promises kept and promises yet to come. And Aveline Somerville Bywater closed her eyes and breathed in the evening air. She had found her happiness. She had built her life. She had loved and been loved in return. What more could anyone ask? Their story did last. It lasted in every laugh shared across the breakfast table, in every argument resolved before sleep, in every morning that began with coffee and ended with gratitude. It lasted in the children who grew up knowing what real love looked like, in the grandchildren who heard stories of the bold companion and the shy woman who chose each other when the world said they should not. It lasted in the house that still stood long after its builders were gone, in the land that still produced, in the community that still remembered. Years after both Crispin and Aveline had passed, their granddaughter found a letter hidden in an old trunk. It was written in Crispin's uneven hand, dated from their first year of marriage. "To my wife, Aveline, I am not good with words on paper. You know this better than anyone since you are teaching me to read them. But I wanted to write something you could keep, something that would last longer than me. You saved my life, not with medicine or money, but with something more. You saw me when everyone else saw scandal. You chose me when everyone else said you were foolish. I will never stop trying to deserve that choice. Every day I wake up grateful. Every night I fall asleep amazed. You are my home, Aveline. You are my hope. You are my everything. I love you. Today, tomorrow, forever. Your husband, Crispin." The granddaughter read the letter through tears. Then she placed it back in the trunk, next to the worn Bible and the faded wedding dress. Some loves are quiet, some are loud, some burn fast and fade. But some loves are steady, patient, built one choice at a time until they become unshakable. That was the love of Aveline Somerville in Crispin Bywater, the shy woman and the bold companion. They found each other on a dusty porch in Wyoming Territory. They built a life that defied every expectation. They raised children who carried their love forward. And when the dust of the past finally settled, they remained, standing together, as they always had. The moral of their story is simple. Do not wait for someone who does not choose you. Do not settle for someone who makes you feel small. Do not let the world tell you who you can love. Choose the person who sees you, who stays for you, who builds with you. That is the secret to a love that lasts. That is the story worth telling. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.